think for my wife, if it wasn't for her, my focus in life would be work. The minute that we found out that she was pregnant, everything in my mind, everything that I thought I cared about changed. And you start to think about you're building something for someone else. Enjoy the little things in life because one day you'll realize they were the big things. The majority of the times that I had a destination wedding, I would bring my wife as my assistant or my whole family if we could do that. Fly as high as you can and be an eagle and surround yourself with other eagles.
To Baby Bump and Business, the podcast exploring what it really looks like to build a business and a family at the same time. I'm your host, B. Troford Wilson, photographer, educator, and first-time mom, sharing the real unfiltered journey of parenthood and entrepreneurship. In honor of Father's Day, this special series highlights fathers in the creative and entrepreneurial space, diving into their experience with fatherhood, providing partnership, and pursuing purpose while raising a family. Because this journey isn't just about moms, it's about families we're building. Today's guest is Mario, one of my favorite photographers. Mario is a fourth generation photographer, earning the craft from his father, who learned from his father before him. He relishes in the dynamics of the family business and believes that photography is way more than just capturing images with a technical skill set. It's about evoking emotion and eliciting his client's genuine personality for each and every photo. Mario, along with his brothers, currently run one of the largest photographic studios in the country, photographing nearly 300 high events a year, including countless destination weddings all over the world. In his spare time, Mario loves traveling the world and enjoying time at home with his beautiful wife and two daughters. Mario, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, B. It's an honor. It's an honor to be here with you all.
Yes, yes. So we're going to get right into it. So when we met, I had the pleasure of meeting you with Society 25. And the one thing I loved was the joy that you spoke about your family and having a family business, but also working with your family. So I want to go a little bit back. Being a fourth generation, what was that like being raised in a family that already had photography as one of the main cores?
It's pretty interesting. I think as we were raised, it was something that was expected. So ever since we were 7 years old, it was like the rite of passage in our family that you're going to start going to events with dad. This is what he wants us to do. We're going to learn the craft. So initially, I think what the beauty about family is everyone's different. Brothers are different. My brother Tom's incredibly creative and loved photography. Anything for me personally that you force me to do, I instinctively want to push back, right? And that's just kind of how I was. So I mean, it was growing up in a family in a fourth generation family business. I especially when I got into high school, and all weddings were on Saturdays, and that's the most popular day for high school parties. And so I was like, this is not something that I want to do. And my friends are working at a restaurant, and they're having so much fun. So I literally I told my dad, I'm thinking about being a busboy at a restaurant. And he's like, you know what? You're fired. You no longer can work with us. And you're gonna go on that path and that journey. And honestly, I think for anyone out there who's ever worked in the restaurant industry, I think there's invaluable lessons that you learn in life. And for me, I think a part of entrepreneurship is being able to sponge off of people and experiences and to learn. So I was able to learn in working in that industry, what good management is, what bad management is, how do you inspire a team, which is, paid dividends down the road in life that I never would have thought. I'll share with you a quick, I hope they're not watching this, a quick story. So back in the day, I was a busboy at Buca de Beppo in high school, and they called them WAs, waiter assistants. And I had two different waiters that I worked under. One, his name was James, and when you're turning a table, he would come down and he'd help flip the table as quick as possible because obviously more tables meant more tips for everybody. And at another server that I don't even remember his name. And all he would do, he would just tell me what to do, tell me that I had to work faster and harder. And I found myself working so much harder for James than the other guy. And for me, what I took from that was be the type of leader that you'd want to follow, right? Be the type of leader that leads from the front, that, when you're in the trenches taking grenades, they're right there next to you. I don't know if you ever watched these medieval movies, but when the king is the first one to charge in battle and they're like, gotta save the king, like that's the type of person that I'd want to follow. And that's the type of leader that I choose to be in our organization and any organizations that we start. So, but yeah, growing up in the business was definitely interesting and challenging. And I ended up going to Florida State University where, speaking of Father's Day, I had a super emotional last weekend. My older daughter just got accepted to Florida State, and it was her high school graduation. So we had lots of tears in our family going on. So if I cry on this, stick with me. I'm super emotional. But yeah, so for me, I went to Florida State, which now my daughter's going to be going to. That's where my wife and I met, and I ended up starting a photography company there. It was really bizarre because I was a freshman and I just got into the fraternity, and I noticed that there was one other company that was doing photos of all the social events. So I called my dad and I said, please set up my camera. He's like, why? I was like, oh, I'm just thinking about starting a photography company. He's like, you starting a photography company? I said, yeah, I bought a domain. I'm going to photograph my fraternity's events, and initially he was skeptical because the price point that they were selling photos online was like, I mean, this is now 20 years ago. It was like $2, $5 a 5x7. And anyways, long story short, I had a mentor. I was in the entrepreneurship program at Florida State in finance, so I double majored, but in 1 year from being a freshman to my sophomore year, we ended up putting the other company on a business. I had 15 photographers that were shooting for me. I was bootstrapping everything from like the sales to buy the next camera to train the next photographer. And I think looking back, all of those experiences in my life, even to today, even to that experience, has led to where we're at. So it's very, very, very cool.
Beautiful. So I know you said that you met your wife at Florida State and you also started your entrepreneurship journey at Florida State. So can you tell us a little bit about meeting your wife and where that intertwined?
Man, now I'm gonna cry. um, so yeah, see, I told you, I warned you. Um, So I remember I was a senior when I met my wife. I was at the point where I was about to set up turnkey operations at different universities. And at that point I had every fraternity, every sorority on campus. I was in the I won't say the number, but the income range that I had for the age that I was and where I was in what city in Tallahassee, I was rich. So I was sponsoring bikini contests. I was, kind of like the Van Wilder on campus. And of course I'm a senior getting ready to graduate, and this is my wife. I see her walk into it's called AJ Sports Bar and Grill. She was wearing blue capri pants and a red top, and I thought she was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, there's no way that I'm not going to approach this girl. And she kind of looked like a freshman, so I was like, I've already got it. I got the whole part of it. I have the whole game ready, and I'm going to give you the tour of Florida State. And she was gonna be a senior that year, so I was like, "Oh my god," I don't my whole game is ruined. So I was like, "You know what? I'll talk to you after the contest," and ended up not connecting, and through social media. Back then it was Facebook. She added me on Facebook, and then we started meeting up, and then the rest is history. We got pregnant 7 months later, and, so when she graduated, she walked across stage, she was 5 months pregnant. But, yeah, I mean, everybody thought we were crazy, but who's crazy now? I got 2 girls 20 years later, still going at it, so I'm still
That's
alive. I mean, that's a
beautiful.
blessing alone that
Right.
she hasn't got me. Every Father's Day, she lets me get 1
That's
more year to live.
beautiful.
That's really as long as but yeah, no,
I love that.
but yeah, but I mean, obviously we've been married for a long time, but I think for my wife, if it wasn't for her, my focus in life would be work. And, fortunately, she was able to be a stay-at-home mom for, 18 years. And, she invested into the girls, and now she just became a nurse, which, she's now seeing like being a working mom as well, and the struggle that a lot of women have to go through. But she's incredibly appreciative, and our daughters are incredible because of her. But she made me realize something really early in life, and that's the meaning of it. And it's not about stuff, it's not about money. For us, it's about experiences and relationships with the people that you love. And who better to do that with than your children? And so we've traveled the world from Asia to Japan to, I guess Asia is in Japan, but Thailand, Bali, Singapore, Vietnam, Hawaii. I mean, you name it, Italy, we've been everywhere. And it's just been something that we always make a focus to every year do something really big together. And yeah, and I got her to thank for that. So
That's beautiful. So I want to dive a little bit more into that. I think that that's beautiful knowing whenever you meet a partner, everyone talks about the value that they bring outside of just the business, right? Some people are looking for a spouse that can help on the business end, but then there's usually that spouse that change your perspective on the meaning of life. So with you having being able to have your first daughter and going into marriage, can you speak a little bit about that focus and how that actually gave you a little bit of tunnel vision of working hard, but for the right reasons?
100%. My entire I think the minute that we found out that she was pregnant, everything in my mind, everything that I thought I cared about changed. And you start to think about you're building something for someone else. And, not that people who don't have children are selfish, but I think that the moment that you know that you're responsible for another life, that life becomes the most important thing to you. And, for me, it's like I can work all day, every day, knowing that it's to benefit them. And I think the biggest struggle that I have is turning my brain off to have that like work life balance and realize that I struggle with it all the time because you can always justify, what, I need to take this call. It's work. This is what pays for the vacations. This is what keeps the house here. This is what keeps the life that we have. But ultimately, you know, I'm I'm a little different now than you are. My daughters are 18 and going on 16. So it's like what I've realized is they don't care about that. They just want you. And this story that I'm going to tell you is I hope I don't cry, but so I used to come home from work years ago. My daughters were like 3 and 5, and they'd be waiting for me when I got home, and we would all like dance barefoot in the kitchen. And I had gone to Barnes and Nobles, and I picked up this wooden sign. This was like this quote, and I just put it on my desk, and it just hit me this one time we were dancing in the kitchen, and I went, I grabbed it, and I put it in the middle of all of our feet, and it's all four of us, all of our feet, and my little ones. She's got her little toes curled. She wasn't keeping still for the picture, but we took a picture of it. It's one of my favorite photos of us because the sign says, "Enjoy the little things in life, because one day you'll realize they were the big things," and that can't be more true. I think in life, it's like we try to think it's just these big trips, but it's really all your kids want you there is like every day, just showing up and to listen to their stories, and that's true. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So I want to touch on, you said it's hard for it to turn it off, right? Especially as entrepreneurs, as creatives, our mind is always thinking about the next idea or, oh, I should try this or, oh, I want to shoot this. And you spoke about, how hard it is to turn that off. And I feel like a lot of us, even me, I felt guilty that I don't know how to turn it off yet. And my daughter's only about to be 8 months. So what would you say to the creative that is battling that, but knowing that it's still okay to keep that creative side and that creative energy?
You know I think that the struggle that all entrepreneurs have is you're never going to be able to completely shut off your brain. But what I think you can do is you can prioritize the time that you have and compartmentalize things. I try to like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, put your phone down, put it away. Nothing is that important that you need to reach me right now because your universe is around you at this time, and then park some time. But for me, I wake up really early. I work out at like 5 a.m. And when I get up, that's my time to like, there's a book I read. It's called the 5 a.m. Club. And what it talks about is the beginning of your day is probably the highest ambition, the highest focus level that you have to really take the things and take the ideas and implement them, or at least journal and at least set your goals for the week or the day or whatnot. So I try to have that time where the girls are sleeping. I try to work out early at 6 in the morning, so I'm back before 7 o'clock, so I could be there for breakfast. Because it would be easy for me to leave the office or to leave for the office at like 5 o'clock every morning and then come back at 7 o'clock at night and be like doing this all for you guys. But no, I think it's really important now. When my daughters both leave for college soon, maybe you might see a different version of me. But especially with my wife now working as well. But for me, I think when is enough in your life, and when do you choose to work to live, or do you want to live to work? And, depending on the type of business you build, like let's put our entrepreneurship hat back on for a second. In the photographic industry, a lot of the times you are the product, right? People want you to be doing your photos. So the question that we were able to accomplish, or the challenge that we were able to accomplish, is how do you build a team that represents your brand, and what aspect of photography can you scale? So in doing that, we chose to enter the volume school world. And by entering the volume school world, when you do get a contract with a school, it's a residual contract, and it's every year as long as you're servicing them well. And then you're doing seniors, and then if they're high schools, like senior portraits. Where currently right now out of our Fort Lauderdale office, we're getting ready right now for photographing 1,200 high school seniors throughout the summer. And being in South Florida, summertime is the slowest time for weddings and events because it's pretty much the surface of the sun here, right? But now our studio is from 9 to 5, slammed every appointment on the hour from now for the next 3 months. And we've built a team and trained photographers and sales reps that, we're able to work on our business, not just in it. Where in the wedding and event world, we are the product. And, case in point, I have 4 events this weekend. So I got a quadruple header. And so it's very hard to balance when are you able to work on your business or in your business, and then when are you going to switch that hat and be a mom or a dad, and then still focus the energy on your partner, which is super important as well. I think sometimes we as parents get lost in like I'm a mom, I'm a dad, but it's easy to lose focus of like what was the foundation that started this journey, and that's super important to continue to focus on that as well. So I'm sure your husband will appreciate that one. You got to take care of
Yes.
daddy.
Yes. And I think that's a beautiful point because, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, there's always changes that you're going to have to get into, right? But then also, when you get into this new role of being a parent, you start to look at your business of, like you said, do I want to work in my business or on my business? And knowing that I can't be everywhere at once. I can't do all the things I want to do or used to do because I want to still be able to balance that time. So, even when your kids were younger, with you still doing destination weddings and traveling, what were things that you started to implement within your business to still be able to have that time in regards to the travel side of your business?
It started with, I would say originally, we would handle every consultation, every timeline appointment. I would sit with the clients and design and select the images for their albums, and, in one respect, I think, there is value there. There's value in learning on how to do the best, on what the best practices are to be able to scale your business. So I think you need to know that. I think that an owner of a business should at least have an understanding of every part of their company, right? Otherwise, you hire somebody that knows more about everything than you do, and it's like going to a mechanic and they tell you, "Oh, your capacitor is broken." You're like, "Oh, okay, then I need to spend money." So I like the fact that I know how to do every aspect of our company, and then choosing which ones. No different than if you were going to put a dollar value on your time, choosing what tasks you can hire somebody else to do so that you can prepare for a better ROI on your time, which is your most valuable asset. So not that I'm more important or better than anyone, just I think individual people have different skill sets. And I don't think that I'm serving my organization the best if I'm always behind the camera. Granted, I've been behind the camera for many, 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 many years. But I mean, even down to this point, when we started to getting into our school business, we developed a lighting system and patented that. And now Level Up Imaging is that company. And we're selling our product now to volume school photographers across the country and even internationally right now. So we have one partner in Canada that, hopefully next year our system will be photographing more students in the country of Canada than any other lighting systems out there. So, just depending on how you take your time, that for me was like, how can we invest that to give us all the biggest ROI, not just me personally.
Perfect, perfect. Now, when it came to the destination weddings and traveling, did you incorporate your family within those jobs, and how were you able to incorporate that?
Yeah, so for the destination weddings, every time getting back to the traveling, the majority of the times that I had a destination wedding, I would bring my wife as my assistant or my whole family if we could do that. So that was kind of the perk of where we were in getting these clients. I mean, to Santorini, I actually have a photo that I did a selfie of my wife and I in Iceland that was in the World Photographic Cup. So there's a lot of benefits to being able to get to that point. But also by bringing my wife, I made it an experience and made it fun. And I mean, I even had a client that brought my entire family to Israel. So, sitting in the console room, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we've always wanted to bring our kids to Israel and, take them through like a lot and the Dead Sea." And she goes, "Well, just bring them." I was like, "Yeah, but it's a lot of money for the flights." And she goes, "No, no, 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 no. We'll cover everything. We'll take care of your hotels. And why don't you come out a week earlier? I'll tell my dad that I hired you for each of the just take a couple pictures, and this couple turned out to be some of our best friends even to this day. And we literally had our entire family come out. We did every single experience that the family had in Israel, the party buses to Jerusalem and to the Dead Sea, and they really made my daughters feel like family. And it was such an incredible experience. I mean, I have stories beyond stories to tell about stuff like this. And yeah, so I to answer your question, I try to bring my family as much as I can to experience the traveling, not just be solo. And if I can't bring my girls, I'll bring my wife and make it a mini vacation. So
Beautiful. And can you talk about what it's like to even have that relationship with your clientele to be able to share, the things that you love about you're celebrating their family and the growth of their family through their weddings, but being able to share how valuable that is to you, and sometimes the client being able to allow you to bring your wife or family to that job.
Yeah, I think the art that gets lost in especially wedding photography is when you start to think that you're just a vendor or just a, just serving them to take their pictures. For me, and I say this in the initial consultation if I'm speaking to a bride or groom, I was like, this is not like we are going to become friends throughout this process, and you need to feel the energy that I feel. And because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to hug you at the end of your wedding before I leave. You know, 9 times out of 10 during your father daughter dance, I'm going to be crying as well. So, I think the most beautiful way to do everything in life is to do it with empathy and to care. So, that for me makes me work harder. And when you're working with clients that they see that and they know how much you care, you you elevate yourself to a different echelon of person. So that's where I've had clients that I've done their wedding now. I mean, is unfortunately I'm doing a wedding of a bar mitzvah that I did her bar mitzvah. So you create clients for life. And then depending on the type of business, we do family portraits and then school pictures and then what happens after kids graduate from high school. So even with our senior portrait experience, I looked at that as that's an opportunity to harvest leads for 4 years from now after those high school kids graduate, they're graduating from college. If you service them right and you created an experience and just, and you impress the family, you can start emailing those lists from 5 years ago. And now, okay, this girl's engaged, this guy's engaged. They remembered us from when they did their senior pictures. And I mean, we're doing weddings all over the United States, from weddings that even the kids that left, but the parents remember from being in the studio and seeing the wedding images that we were able to do for them. So it's very, very cool.
That's beautiful. And did you have to set any boundaries within your business to be able what when your kids started getting older?
Yeah. So like I said, I think for me the super important thing is especially being there for breakfast. So even I love working out. I think your health is super important. But for me, I'd rather wake up super early. Well, I mean, my daughters can sleep till like 11 o'clock. I mean, I can't. I'm up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. But for me, it's being able to get all of that done where I could have the time that I need for myself, mental clarity, focus. Raising your ambitions. People look at. I would say people look at my life from a social media lens, and they don't realize that I'm projecting what I want to be projected. Like that's not real. Like, it's so funny that people think, I run into clients who are like extremely successful and then they look at me and they're like, man, I envy your life. I'm like what? You envy my life? Like, this world, people like I get sad. It's okay. Like people are human. Like these feelings, this self-doubt, all of that is normal. For me, it's like it's important that you raise yourself every single day and you conquer the day. So there's times that even I get sad and you could look and be like, oh my God, he has nothing to be sad about. He has all these businesses and he's got a beautiful wife and his kids seem to like him. But at the end of the day, it's something that I think if I could be a part of letting people know is like it's okay to feel the ways that we do, but also get yourself jacked up, pick the right friends that surround you. You know, somebody was saying this, I don't know if I read it or what, but it's like eagles don't fly with pigeons. They fly with other eagles. If an eagle's flying with a pigeon, chances are he's flying too low. So fly as high as you can and be an eagle and surround yourself with other eagles because, the friend group that I have, like the conversations that we share are entrepreneurial, they're scaling. It's about, whether regardless what it is, but it's pushing each other to become better. So I think choosing the right friends is super important as well.
Beautiful. And now with your wife going back, you said that she just now started nursing. What was that process like for you, and how were you able to support her while she decided to channel in on that?
Well, I'm still supporting her right now. I mean, she got hired at Baptist Health, which is one of the best hospitals. And except when you're younger, or I guess newer into the nursing industry, you start off working nights. So she works from like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So that requires me to be like now for the first time like Mr. Dad, where my whole life I was kind of like, she took care of everything. So now I'm cooking dinners. I'm trying to clean as much as I can, be as supportive as possible. I make the bed every morning for her. So when she comes back, the bed is made. I put these blackout blinds in the room so that she can sleep, but it's super important to try to do your best. And I'll tell you something, it has made me have a different respect for the last 18 years of her having to pick the kids up from school and be there and show up and cook dinner and clean. And it's not easy. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mario, I've learned so much on this conversation, and I know that the listeners here are going to be able to learn so much from your journey. Thank you for your transparency. Thank you for sharing the beautiful journey of you and your kids and your wife. Well, one quick question. Are any of your kids into photography?
So my younger daughter and my older daughter both I've taken them to a few different events. My younger one really enjoys photography. My older one, I think she's going like the finance route. I mean, she's incredibly smart with numbers, but I try to implore and I think for everyone, photography is a craft that isn't just a business. If you were to look at my family travels, when I bring my camera on all of our vacations, if you go to like our social media, that's where people get this perception, right? But I document it at a different level because of the knowledge that I've had, and one of the things that, there's something called your fellowship, which I may be applying to with Professional Photographers of America. And you need to put together, I guess it's like 25 or 30 images of your best images of your body of work. And you have to write like a thesis, like a 3,000-page thesis. And for me, like I want to do something a little different where everybody would think that I do it on like weddings and like show like loan collection World Cup images. But for me, photography has given me a gift to be able to document my family's life at a different level. And everything that I do is for them. So, that's where for me, it's like photography doesn't just have to be your business, but by knowing how to document your life, you're able to re enjoy memories like you never have. We have this Apple TV that flips just all of these trips on the TV at home. And I'm just like, so many things from 15 years ago, I completely forgot. And I'm able to relive them, and to relive them at a different level is really, really special. And for me, that's what the gift that photography has given to me. And then depending on how you want to use it for either business or scaling or documenting your personal life. Yeah, that for me is what's super important. So, thank
Beautiful,
you for
beautiful.
having me. This was great to be a part of this. I truly enjoyed it.
Thank you, and happy early Father's Day.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Baby Bump and Business. I hope today's conversation reminded you that you're not alone in this journey and that there's real strength in building something meaningful while showing up for your family. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate, review, or share it with another parent, creative, or entrepreneur who could use the encouragement. Your support helps this community grow and allows more stories like ours to be heard. To stay connected and get updates on new episodes and real conversations from parents in the creative space, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Baby Bump and Business. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and keep showing up for what matters most.